Hello and welcome to our debate. Our group members are myself, Megan Hayes, Brianna McPherson, and Julie Thompson. We chose the topic of care models versus empowerment models relating to the independence of individuals with disabilities. We also decided to do an informal debate format. The introduction is given by myself, Megan. Summarizers for the care side is Julie. The summarizer for the empowerment side is Brianna. Brianna will also introduce illustrations. The research will be presented by myself and a fielder. In today's society, independent living is a highly valued achievement. However, not all individuals are given the same opportunities. This is especially true among individuals with disabilities. Recent legislation has been passed to help these individuals achieve greater success in post-school transitions. The Individuals with Disabilities Act, better known as passed originally in 1990, that emphasized transition plans for all students with disabilities. The transition plans were designed to be based on the individual student's interests and their level of needed support. There was a second act passed by Congress called the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. This was to help initiate state vocational rehabilitation agencies to provide transition services, collaboratively with school corporations to provide those services. Vocational rehabilitation agencies receive federal funding, and 15% of their funding is supposed to be allocated to help provide these transition services for those individuals. Despite these recent legislation efforts to help these individuals, several factors exist that affect the success of gaining full independence. Some of these factors include race, gender, and disability type. Other factors include the community the individual resides in as to what appropriate services are available, the current household income, and the levels of education the guardians hold to help the individual transition. Many other areas to consider that influence the transition include access to public transportation, the ability to communicate effectively to others, and the ability to maintain personal hygiene and keep up with household demands. When looking at transitioning to a workplace or independent living, factors such as typical classroom behavior and the ability to participate in the individual education plan development also are accounted for. Many successful transitions often develop from parental expectations for post-secondary life and from individuals who have been provided several work experiences and training throughout the high school transition period.
I will be discussing the main points that go along with the empowerment side of the debate. The first point is referring to Waymeyer and Gergaudas' 2004 study, and it is the independent living movement. This movement emerged from a strong empowerment and self-determination emphasis, while education has historically been aligned with medical models and/or deficit reductions focus. Compliance codes that goes along with this point is 2.02 responsibility. Behavior analysts have a responsibility to operate in the best interest of the clients. The second point also refers to Waymeyer and Gergaudas' 2004 study, and it is promoting autonomy. There are many centers for independent living in which work to promote autonomy. They provide an array of transition services such as job training and coaching, benefits advocacy, transportation training, training to empower and promote self-determination. Another point under promoting autonomy is that the IDEA requires transition services to be addressed in individualized education programs, IEPs, when students reach the age of 16. So the intent of the transition mandate was to ensure that all students received educational programming that adequately prepared them for adulthood. Significantly, the Act also required that the coordinated activities, one, be based on individual student needs, and two, take into account students' preferences and interests. And this point reflects the compliance codes 4.02 involving clients in planning and consent and 4.03 individualized behavior change programs. It also reflects the ethical principles of do no harm, respecting autonomy, according dignity, and treating others with care and compassion. The third point on the empowerment side of the debate is self-determination, which is reflected upon Seong, Waymeyer, Palmer, and Little's 2015 study, which provided the following supporting points. Students with higher levels of self-determination are more likely to focus on goals, solve their problems, and make decisions during their educational planning. A benefit of student involvement in educational planning is the enhanced self-determination of adolescents with disabilities. When acting on the basis of skills and attitudes of self-determination, individuals have a greater ability to take control of their lives and assume the role they have a greater ability to take control of their lives and assume the role of successful adults in our society. In addition to studies that examine student involvement, interventions to promote student self-determination, research has focused on the transition outcomes that result from enhanced levels of self-determination, including individual quality of life and employment for people with disabilities. Promoting student involvement has been identified as a best practice for successful transition for youth and young adults with disabilities. Seong et al.'s 2015 study established that intervention with self-directed IEP results in enhanced students' level of transition empowerment. The compliance codes that support self-determinism or self-determination are 2.02 responsibility, 4.02 involving clients in planning and consent, and 4.03 individualized behavior change programs. Ethical principles that are reflected are respecting autonomy, according dignity, and treating others with care and compassion. In summary, promoting self-determination, according to Waymeyer and Gergudis, 2004, is both the best practice in transition services and has been empirically validated as contributing to more positive outcomes.
I'm going to address the care side of this debate, and I will begin by establishing the medical approach to ASD. The medical model of disability is foundationally based in the emphasis of clinical diagnosis, which determines the treatment appropriate, as well as the form of life that the person who is disabled. These approaches are scientific and are based on applied scientific methods in regards to understanding treatment and prevention, from Engel, 1977. It is a widely held belief that autism spectrum disorder is largely genetic in origin and therefore warrants medical treatment based on scientific method. Since the etiology of autism is neurologically based, medical treatment ought to be considered before external factors are explored. Next, I want to address physicians' training and education along with other medical healthcare providers in regards to ASD population. Warfield et al. 2015 conducted 10 in-depth case studies to gain an understanding of primary healthcare providers' level of training and knowledge when working with the specific needs of adults with autism spectrum disorder. Through phone calls, researchers gathered data and using structured interview guide. Participants were obtained through the Autism Treatment Network and also through the New England Index. The data was collected and analyzed, and it was discovered that there are several areas of needed focus to better assist doctors and staff when working with the autistic population. However, the report did state that through the Affordable Care Act, there are many new opportunities for doctors and staff members to have access to information to improve healthcare provisions. And in the same article, the doctor admitted that there was little to no formal training given in their education or time supervised in residency, but that it was improving and more training is being received, even though it's still not quite enough, especially for the increasing population. The point here is that there are continuing education programs for medical care providers to use to learn how to manage to best meet the needs of this expanding population. The third point that I want to make is that services concerned with how much independence individuals with disabilities can manage. The care model to treating ASD can be supported in that many individuals with ASD struggle to manage the changing environments as they transition into adulthood. For example, independent living, self-advocacy skills, and even finding needed assistance can be a real challenge for many. While it seems that vocational programs during the transition period may be useful, many parents are reporting that they are unhelpful for those on the spectrum, according to Chikzamora, Teti, and Fist, 2015. One study included both participants and caregivers, and it had a total of 4 focus groups were conducted. Questions were asked and responses were used to establish data, and the results concluded that caregivers reported being worried about a lack of social, educational, and vocational assistance services available, as well as having a feeling of fatigue to meet the requirements of the individual. In addition to the lack of social support and everyday social challenges, the caregivers also reported educational and vocational transition challenges. These concerns and issues support that the care model is a superior model for treating those with ASD. All of this is in compliance with the Medical Compliance Code 3.02, which is medical consultation, and that supports the care side of this matter.
I will be sharing a few visuals, which include a graph, charts, and a diagram. So here is the graph. This graph is of the employment rate of individuals with disabilities versus those without disabilities. As you can see, the blue dotted line up here represents individuals without a disability, and the blue solid line represents individuals with a disability. You can see that the employment rate of individuals with disabilities is much lower than those without. The following charts, the first one displays the employment rates of individuals, again, with a disability and without, from the years 2009 to 2015. It compares all individuals ages 16 and older, men ages 16 to 64, women ages 16 to 64, and all individuals ages 65 and over. As you can see again, the employment rate of individuals with disabilities is lower across all displayed populations. The second chart shifts gears to look at the educational attainment of individuals ages 25 and older and with and without disabilities from the year 2014. As you can see, there are more individuals gaining higher education than those without disabilities. The last visual is a diagram of employment rates, again in 2016. It shows how individuals with disabilities only make up 19.5% of the labor force, while individuals with no disability make up 67.9% of it, and the employment rate for them is cut in half, the unemployment rate. These visuals were chosen to demonstrate the employment rates and educational levels of individuals with disabilities. the rates of employment for individuals with disabilities are decreasing while the rates for a typical person are increasing.
I am going to discuss the research behind the empowerment model versus the care model. Brianna discussed in a little bit of detail the Waymeyers and Gregotis 2004 study. These researchers use the use of independent living centers. These centers are used to teach individuals skills of self-determination to individuals with disabilities. This study specifically targeted 80 high school seniors with disabilities who had varying degrees of self-determination. The group with the higher degree of self-determination had more desirable outcomes a year later. 80% of the highly self-determined individuals worked for pay, as compared to 43% of the lower self-determination group. In a similar study by Waymeyer, 1 year after high school, the self-determined group lived outside of their high school home. So whether they were not living with caregivers, it was independently. And at the 3-year mark, they were more likely to live independently than their less self-determined peers. In another empowerment study by Seong in 2015, it was a 5-year longitudinal study. They looked how interventions were used to promote self-determination through the use of self-directed IEPs. They had a control group and an intervention group. The control group received instruction in the form of family involvement training. So it's simply just involving the family. The intervention group was giving specialized training to help them get involved in educational planning and decision planning in the form of self-directed IEPs. So how they would run their IEP meeting, what kind of goals that the individual would like to see put into their plans. Students in the intervention group were taught to eventually lead their own meetings, and those students showed significant increases in the level of self-determination. By promoting the student involvement, it helped increase transition empowerment in this study. In the third study, researchers Mandy, Murin, Bay-Canner, Staunton, Cobb, Hellriegel, Anderson, and Skuse focused on students with ASD transitioning from primary school to secondary school while participating in the STEP ASD intervention. The students who participated in this study had an average age range of 11 and a half. This intervention helps teachers and parents collaboratively discuss the students' needs to make the necessary modifications to help with the transition into secondary school or middle school. In this intervention, a series of meetings are held to help bridge the gap in transition. So the parents meet with the STEP ASD provider prior to the end of their time in the primary school. And they do an interest inventory, a assessment to determine their level of need, and the individuals who are who will be in direct contact with the student in middle school are given a transition pack along with the family that focuses on specific areas of need to that particular student. These strategies are used to improve current teaching strategies and to help keep consistent communication between the STEP ASD provider, the school, and the parents. So this particular intervention works to help improve teaching strategies and not overhaul, so that it's not a big overhaul of how the school already operates, and it's not near impossible for the teacher to do. So 73% of the participants in the study found the program helpful, and that it made the transition process a lot more smoother for those individuals. Now looking at the care side, there was not a whole lot of research material available. In the review of literature, Mary Ann Davis outlines that there are impeding barriers with individuals with emotional and behavioral difficulties in the age ranges of 16 to 25. So those young adults who are transitioning into adulthood. These individuals tend to be developmentally delayed in maturation, leaving them ill prepared for adulthood. So they're not quite ready. They might be of the right age, but they're not quite ready to undertake the necessary responsibilities of adulthood. Many come from complex family relationships where they may want help from guardians or adults and then push it away, or maybe their family's broken up. Many individuals seek support when they are in ages from 17 to 19. They're actively looking for help, whereas from 10 to 16, they might have all the support that was tried to be given them. And in 17 to 19, there's really a lack of continued services. So institutionalizing these individuals often just encompasses further mistrust by authorities because the places lack appropriate services for their age or their ability levels. Children's services are geared towards the child's needs, and adult services are for adult needs. There's no middle ground of services for a youth who's learning his or her first roles as an adult. And also, there's often an issue of funding due to the lack of coordinated transitional care services from school to independent living or an institutional setting.
Okay, well, we have shown here that the differences between the use of empowerment models versus care models and the effects that they have on the independence of individuals with disabilities. Now we will begin the filters. So question number one is a question that says, what resources are available for physicians to become properly educated to meet the needs of the autistic population? And as I stated earlier, along with the Affordable Care Act program, which is a very useful program for medical professionals, Autism Speaks is another organization that offers many resources for continuing education for both families and professionals.
The second question is go for vocational resources in their communities. So by searching the Family and Social Services Administration link on the indiana.gov website, a family can find a list of resources in the state. So Indiana is broken down into 17 different service areas. Map on there, and in the areas, each are their location of their area office, the phone number, and that the counties that the office serves are also listed. And after filling out eligibility paperwork, you can pick a provider according to the county. And also under the same Family and Social Services Administration link, there's a list of providers that provide vocational rehabilitation in your area. So in my area, these include CARS, the ARC of Indiana, Assist Incorporated, and Hamilton Center.
The question I will be discussing is what resources are available for post-secondary education for students with disabilities. According to the U.S. Department of Education, a post-secondary school may not deny your admission simply because you have a disability if you meet the essential requirements for the admission. Also, academic adjustments can be requested of the school by informing them of your disability. These academic adjustments are considered modifications to the academic requirements as are necessary to ensure that such requirements do not discriminate the student with a disability. And academic adjustments could include changes in the length of time permitted for the completion of degree requirements, substitution of specific courses that are required for the completion of degree requirements, adaptations of the manner in which specific courses are conducted, a reduced course load, extended time on tests, and the provision of auxiliary aids and services. Once services are identified, institutions cannot charge the student with a disability for them, or they can't charge them more than what they would charge a student without a disability. A variety of institutions of post-secondary education also have summer programs that are available, and these are where students can participate while they're still in high school after graduation, and it's a great way for the student to ease their transition into post-secondary education, kind of learning how to like live in a dorm room and do other such things before they actually come to campus before school starts. Another resource available is PACER's National Parent Center on Transition and Employment. This website offers resources to parents and youth transitioning and or preparing for post-secondary education. They provide many great resources such as creating a personal transition plan, guides to help parents prepare early, tools to help with college level reading, involve students in their IEP process, charting career paths, and guides on how to take part in extracurricular activities, preparing students to be self-advocates, and promoting self-determinism and successful transitions. So those are just a couple of resources that are offered, one through the U.S. Department of Education and the other through PACER's National Parent Center on Transition and Employment. So thank you everyone for watching our debate.